Hey, welcome to Talking Niagara on November the 5th, Tuesday. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to the show. As always, at 7 o'clock every weekday morning here from Niagara. Dave, welcome. How are you?
Yes, and today, thank you. Yes, and welcome today, the day that our American cousins choose the lesser of two evils, whatever they think is the lesser of two
Well,
evils.
I'm
Um,
going to say, I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
say to my American friends, go out and vote. Just go out and vote, right? Let's make it the biggest vote we've had in history. Go out and vote.
Yes, wherever you choose, that's what you choose. Yes, and I don't think you're going to have to persuade too many people. I think already there have been mail-in votes that have
Yeah,
stripped the other previous mail-in votes by quite a number. And this time, not unlike the last two times, the Republicans have actually come out and voted by mail as much as the Democrats have. So
yeah.
you have already, I think 30% of all Republicans have already voted, and the same thing for the Democrats. Something astonishing.
It makes sense if you think about it that if you've already made your mind up, and say you're a party worker or something like that, you're getting the vote out today. It makes sense to vote by mail in advance. Absolutely, it makes sense. Whichever party you're supporting, the job you've if you've done your vote by mail earlier on, you can now get on with the job of the day that you're for supporting your candidates.
Yeah, you don't have to miss work,
Yeah,
and that's a big deal. I think that anything that permits people to vote, more people to vote, is a better thing. It's not feasible for everybody to get in a long lineup and wait to vote.
yeah.
Vote ahead of time is a uh,
Well,
really good idea. As a
something.
matter of fact, we've have pre-election votes here too, but usually you have to have a reason for it. So
Yeah,
when you go there and they have to ask you, well, why are you here? And you say, well, I work shifts that day. In my case, it's because I've I'll be working the election, so that's
yeah.
why I have to vote early. But the the thing here is get out and vote in any old way you want, and but vote. So if that
Yeah.
means by mail, that's wonderful. But do vote, and whatever the outcome of that is, the American people have spoken, and once the American
Well,
people have spoken, we live with it.
yeah. And what you say in relation to the postal ballot, somewhere near 50 million on the postal ballot, which is almost unheard of. It's rarely been above 10 or 20 million.
Yes, and this time it's equally split, almost equally split between Democrats and Republicans, which is different because almost always it's the Democrat. The larger amount of the mail-in vote is Democrat, and that, of course, is one of the issues that the Republicans kept bringing up. But this time they embraced the mail-in vote. They used to say, "Well, the mail-in vote is part of the strategy of cheating and stealing the election," but not this time. They have encouraged their people to get out there and get their vote in by mail or any other means. And Chris Simone is with us today. Hi, Chris.
Yeah. All right.
So, in my view, it's how each American feels the lesser of
Yeah.
two evils. Those
Well,
people
I
who are
wasn't even
voting
going
for the lesser of two evils are the ones that are going to make the decision of who's going to win and who's not.
I wasn't even going to comment upon. I wasn't even going to comment upon the candidates at any level. I'm just urging people to go vote.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that those the double haters are the ones that are going to make the decision here. Those people who are not too fond of either party will have to pick the one Now, most of the time, when people don't feel they have a choice, that that neither party's any good, will skip the election. But this is a different situation where people, the double haters, that small group of people who are undecided, are the ones that don't like either party, are the ones that are going to make the difference here, because not like times past when they would avoid the ballot because they don't think it's worth it. This time,
Okay.
it's different.
So the last election in 2020, the turnout was significantly higher than any prior election. Do you expect the turnout to even be higher this election?
Yes, I do. And
Yeah,
I think the
so
typical
do
thing,
I actually. I have to say that.
and I think the typical thing will, in the end, it is doubtless that the Democrats are going to win the popular vote, as they have done for the last 4 election cycles, but may not win due to the Electoral College.
Yeah, Karen is basically saying she's used advanced voting for years, and she loves it, and that's a good thing. Morning, Mike.
Yes, anything that makes it easier for people to vote is a great thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely fabulous. I think that makes it easier for people to vote and means more ballots in the ballot box and a more representation of the people. Unlike Doug Ford, who got in with what? With only like 28% of the electorate showing up. You want to avoid that. You want to say to the people, look, get out there and have your voice heard. Even if you don't like anybody out there, find the one you like the best of the worst. And Chris Simone says, can they know by tonight what would hold up the results? They can only know tonight if it's decisive.
yeah.
It would have to be very decisive. There are
It's
different.
it's in those marginal states that are going to be the problem. We're going to be waiting for days, maybe longer than last time.
Yeah, places like California, I think even Pennsylvania, will not permit their mail-in ballots to be opened until after all the other ballots have been counted. Then they go to the mail-in votes. So in states that do that, then you're going to have a delay. But if it's a decisive victory, let's say Kamala Harris wins by 3 to 5 points or something like that, or Trump does, then it would become fairly clear that it's obvious that one state won over another. But but places like Arizona and other places, where in Pennsylvania and all the different swing states, it may take multiple recounts to go. Plus, there are the idea of violence focused on electoral officials is another thing that might hold things up. This year, they may have security.
So why is it held up in swing states? Is Chris is asking. Why does it take longer to count there? It takes longer to count if we were to have election here, and let's say that on the basis of the last 2 people that stood in this particular thing, well, let's say that it was between the Liberals and the Conservatives here, and they were all within a margin of let's say within a margin of 100, then you would end up with several recounts, and there are several types of recounts. So you can, it takes several hours to count the polls totally. If you have to go back to count every single vote that's in the ballot, that can take quite a long time. So many of these, for an individual area like Niagara Falls, that could hold up until you might not know the result if it's close. If you're talking about 1 or 2 votes, you could be not knowing the result until the morning. That's why in the States, they might not know the result for a week, because these are much bigger areas.
The so-called purple states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, these are states that could go either way. So they're going to be the ones that decide the election, and they're have been very, very close in the past. 2016 and 2020 have been a very, very tight races.
Well,
There's been a multiple of recounts.
Yeah.
If, for instance, in Georgia, the Georgia was carried by 11,700 votes.
Well, and you remember the chaff incident in Florida back in 2000, you know, where
that was voting machine,
yeah, they're all about the voting machines and whether they had clearly punched a hole in the card. And there was proposals about blowing air onto those machines, having a third party not touch the ballots, but actually have somebody at least hold the ballots down or something and hold, and blow air at them in order to get the clear the chaff.
Yeah, we don't have that problem now, though. Any machines that are out there are digital. So
yeah, digital. Yes, I know.
So the United States likes voting machines. They always have had. Where they were using voting machines long before we did, and up here in our federal election, at least, you have to have a ballot.
Yeah, and yes, it's not an operational failure; it's a recounting that takes the time. Yeah,
that's right. And they have to, and there's always mistakes being made. I've worked the polls here, and there will be mistakes. There will be mistakes like.
I think the answer is no.
What was the question?
Are we doing a live election show?
No, we can't. We can't do that. We'd be here for days, maybe for hours. But yeah, the election begins at 9 o'clock, does it, or is it? Or
no, I think elections at 8 starts at 8 o'clock Eastern time. It goes on till 9 p.m.
Eastern
Hawaii time.
Yeah, all these votes will have to be counted. Now, the big problem with the U.S. election, of course, is the electoral system, the electoral college. There's only two states that divide the electoral college, and that's Illinois and Maine. So let's say in Maine, let's say they have three electoral. I don't know how many they got, but let's say they got that 3 or 4. Let's say they have 4 electoral college votes. I don't know how many they have, but let's say they have 4, and Trump wins 30% and Kamala wins 70%. Then they would give 3 of the electoral college votes to Kamala and 1 to Trump, and the same as Illinois. But all the other ones, it's winner take all. So if you win a state by 1 vote, let's say you went to Pennsylvania, that's got 19 electoral college votes, and you win that state by 1 vote, that means the whole state goes over to whoever won that 1 vote, which is in nowadays democratic process seems to be wholly unfair. You would think, let's say in Pennsylvania, that you would almost split the electoral college 50-50 in a case like that. So what's going to happen? Quite definitely, the Democrats are going to win the popular vote.
I've got 2 questions. I've got 2 questions for you. Got 2 questions for you. So, who would we recommend to go watch the results? I don't know. Just pick your poison. Any American news show. I think just pick one and flip on the other ones every once in a while, but come back to the one that you picked. Last time I picked ABC. I won't be picking ABC again. Right? And I doubt that I'm actually going to even watch it tonight. I'm going to try to avoid it. I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up Wednesday morning and see where we go. And another more important question, Chris is asking when Science Friday is coming back.
Yay, Chris. Thank you, Chris. We stopped Science Friday because we thought our listenership wasn't too interested in my blabbing on and on about unique things in science. But yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you. Maybe we will have at least one Science Friday every month. Maybe that would be a good idea.
Yeah, we can do it. We could do a monthly science show. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Move. So anything else more on the election?
only that the whole world is stressed out over this thing, and
let's get it over with.
Probably, and being rather removed from this, being a Canadian, I think that it might amuse me to watch the results, watch all the newscasters all stressed out like crazy, depending the ebbs and tides of what's going on in the electorate. But it is really very important. I see changes coming to the parties in the United States going forward, because obviously each of the two different parties cannot reach the people. There is a massive.
I think there are differences between the states, and I think that is, there are differences. What is considered important, let's say in Washington State, may well be different than what's important in California, than what's important in New York, or what's important in Idaho, for example.
Well, that's typical of democracies everywhere.
Exactly. So some form of regional representation is necessary. And yes, we'll get to that, Mike.
Yeah, we have. I would just say that oh darn, I hit the wrong thing here. So I would just say that the Electoral College has to be gotten rid of. The Electoral College has made it possible for only two parties to be of any kind of prominence in the legislature. Here we have 3, 4. We could have a bunch of different parties, but down there, the only thing they can have is independence, and that may make a difference today too. Whoever votes for JFK, whoever votes for or RFK, whoever
he's no longer in the ballot.
Stein may draw off just enough votes to make the difference, but the system they have there makes it almost impossible for anything other than a two-party system.
Yeah.
So if the Electoral College was ever improved, and if you look at the history of the Electoral College, it wasn't supposed to be like it is.
No,
it was the machinations of Thomas Jefferson that made that crazy. So they've never been able to improve it, and well, we'll see. We'll see what happens today. We look at the United States as being one of the most imperfect democracies in the democratic world as far as representation goes. So, but my big issue is the amount of ammunition that has been sold lately in the United States, massive amounts of ammunition, which does not bode well. It's not common.
There's a couple of questions on here. So Mike is pointing out we're having an Indian war in Brampton, and Chris is asking about what's he talking about in Brampton. Yeah, there's been a couple of attacks on temples in Brampton, and we'll get to that later in the. Well, it's one of the topics that we have got on our list. Okay. All right. So going on, first couple of items. Quincy Jones dies at 91.
Yeah, Quincy Jones is probably one of the most fully the polymath of music. Actually, he is a writer, producer, instrumentationalist himself. So he's been a jazz musician. He's played piano and trumpet. He got into producing, and he does everything. He does composition, or he did composition. He did producing. He did performing.
Yeah.
What he is most famous for, of course, is his production wherewithal. He's also being involved in movie soundtracks, in all kinds of things. So this guy is probably one of the most important musical figures in the Western world, basically, because of all the different things he can do.
And he was the person who was the producer of the American record "We Are the World," the American equivalent of Band-Aid.
Yes, he's also, and people will, number one, come up and say, well, he's the guy that did Thriller, which is the most selling record of all time.
True.
But they'll always throw that out there. But long before Thriller got to be prominent, he was super well known already at that time. Even if Thriller never came around, we would still be doing a nod to him because of his body of work. His canon is incredible.
He's done, yeah, pretty fantastic stuff. When you consider that he's worked alongside people like Sinatra.
Yeah, everybody, Ella Fitzgerald, yeah. Sinatra, a wide variety of people. In fact, his very first production was Leslie Gore's "This My Party," this kind of thing. One of those things way back in the '60s. If you remember Leslie Gore, "It's my party," you know, there's something like that, that kind of thing.
And tributes coming in from across the world include Michael Caine, Elton John, Shonda Rhimes, and others calling him a legend. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Doubtless of that. Now, the other guy we're going to talk about is Sinclair.
Yeah. So Indian leader Murray Sinclair died yesterday at 73.
The reason why Murray Sinclair is important is because he's an Indigenous guy. He is half Cree and half Ojibwe, which kind of makes me smile because they used to be enemies back in the day, So the Ojibwe, she's half Ojibwe, half Cree, and unlike a lot of Indigenous people, he was able to overcome the difficulties that faced him and became a lawyer. He became a lawyer, and he was instrumental in the negotiations between the federal government and the Indigenous people in trying to right some of the wrongs of history. And he was very, very important in bringing to fore the residential school blight on Canadian history and what it's done to the Indigenous people, and means by which we can reverse that. So that's why he's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And not so, not as well known internationally as Quincy Jones, but important politically.
Yeah, well, he's never gonna. There's no the limelight's not going to show on his name like it does Quincy Jones. But on the other hand, he may have had more important effect in the long run, particularly for the group of people, the Indigenous people, and trying to right the wrongs of history. So hats off to Murray Sinclair. Unfortunately, he died at the young age of 73, but he leaves a legacy that that fairness may be on its way to the Indigenous people.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, Ontario mayors, we were talking about this briefly yesterday. Ontario mayors are asking Ford to use the notwithstanding clause to clear homeless encampments.
Yeah. Now, we talked about this yesterday and left the question, is it going to, because of society's harsher view of homeless people and their encampments, the shanty towns made of tents, basically, that would have been shanty towns in times past, but now are tent towns. Are we going to have to use legal means by which to get rid of them? Are we going to have, are people going to allow harsher treatment of people like this? Are we going to gather them up, put them in a field, a separate field? What they want to do is to be able to use the notwithstanding clause so they can bypass the Charter of Rights. And the Waterloo and Kingston have clearly stated, and the courts have clearly stated, you can't get rid of these people unless you have a place for them to go.
Yeah.
You want to get rid of them. But the question is, where are you going to go? And the idea is continually being floated that we have to force that, not we, but the
society
will have to force
or
them.
government.
Force them into areas where they may have to go under mandatory treatments for drug addiction or mental illness, or act as agents to reintroduce themselves into polite society. No more going to the bathroom in the graveyards, that kind of thing. No more going into empty houses and that kind of thing. So I am really tense on this particular situation because the homeless situation will not get any better as it is. And how do you then reverse it? Are you going to have to take a harder stand? Ottawa giving these responsibilities of encampments, druggies, to private security. This must be stopped. It is police work. Yeah, you know what? There has to be a new part of the government that will address this. Something devoted completely to it. We do not have a government agency that is devoted to the homeless situation, and I think there should be, so that we can maximize resources and find ways in which to reverse this terrible trend that's happening. Every city in Ontario has homeless people, and they are taxing the resources of the nonprofits. The government themselves can't come up with the money.
Well, Chris is basically saying Miami focus on the unsheltered program lowered the encampments by 90%. They're saying a lot of admin were paid off in Miami. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, but
probably given money to look the other way.
Yeah. That's assuming. The question, though, about encampments, it's a very tough one. They've been, what you've got is Barrie, Brampton, Brantford, Cambridge, Chatham, Kent, Clarington, Guelph, Guthrie, Oakville, Oshawa, Pickering, St. Catharines, Sudbury, and Windsor. Those mayors have all asked for use of the notwithstanding clause.
Yeah, but there's 29 mayors, so I don't know where the other ones stand on it. But
the other ones have not made any request as yet.
But it's very clear what society is now thinking and how they are viewing the homeless. It's with harsher and harsher eyes, and that can't be good either. Get rid of them, get them out of here. They're making a mess. They're detracting from our cities and our towns. We have to do something with them. We're not going to just feed them anymore, but where are they going to go? So there has to be a government agency directly involved in just this.
If we're going to deal with the problem, we have to put some money into basic housing. Into deal. If you're going to close the encampments down, you need to deal with some form of absolutely rock bottom basic housing. And we're not talking palaces here. We're just talking a place where people can, have a bed and make some food.
The problem is when they have taken a lot of the homeless people and found places for them, they find that they leave them and go back to the homeless lifestyle. So there's something intrinsic that we don't understand. We call it mental health, we call it addiction, we call it other things. So there has to be some sort of rehabilitation program going on. We find that I've talked to different people and I've talked to store owners when I go around. They're very frustrated by these people because they say they don't want help. They don't want the help. They don't want to live a different way, even if they've had the opportunity to do that. So there is definitely a social contagion maybe going around where these people obviously feel that they like that lifestyle and there is no alternative for them. So the rehabilitation part of the homeless and getting them reintroduced into society where they're not now you can live any way you want, but right now the homeless are a drain on society.
Yeah.
They're a drain on the monies, the taxes, and all those things. What we want to do is reintroduce them into society so they are welcome members back into society.
I think that's an important aspect, and notwithstanding what you just said, I think there are some questions about questions about how we treat the homeless and whether if we had basic housing, not all homeless would go back on the street.
No, but yeah, maybe not. But there is an element that will go back out, and that's the problem. The homeless people are costing us a lot of money and
I know.
making a lot of problems for us, and also the idea of crime, because a lot of addiction brings crime, and a lot of the homeless have drug issues, and others will have mental health issues. So how do you then rehabilitate? These are things that are bad for the people physically and mentally. How do you, like, if you had a bunch of people with leprosy, right? You would take them someplace to a hospital or whatever and rehabilitate them, give them the drugs they need to overcome leprosy. But these people have a kind of a leprosy that's not so easily treated. So what do? Put them in a homeless sort of leper colony and just leave them there? Or do you, if you go sort of the homeless leper colony basically and then rehabilitate them? These are the struggling issues that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're not going away tomorrow either. That's a big question. Right. Now, interesting thing is about these, other than Brampton, there's not really any of the big city mayors that have actually asked for the use of the notwithstanding clause.
Yeah, but my point is, everywhere in Ontario, people are getting fed up with homeless people and the mess they make and the draw on the resources they have. This is just human nature, and if we don't do something to rehabilitate these people properly and have an agency directly from the government to apply to their rehabilitation, or at least make their lives a little less dependent on drugs or whatever else has got them there. Housing is one thing, but the lifestyle is a whole different thing. If they take their drug addictions and their mental health issues into nice places that are built for them, modest but nice places, what would then happen there? I'm not so sure those nice places will stay nice for very long.
Yeah. It's not about, and again, we've talked on this program in the past about programs like Housing First. And again, when they've used Housing First in Finland, it wasn't about about providing, excellent housing. It was about providing the basics. Right.
Yeah.
But it was also about providing other programs to get people off of, whatever it was, off of methadone and other things.
We anyway, it's not going away.
Yeah. Okay. These people can be put up in exactly the same hotels as the immigrants were used. Reintroducing into the homeless that cannot afford housing of its own doesn't work. Yeah, that is for true. We've got a big problem, and we always have had we always have vagrancy charges and jail to introduce them to. Yeah. Right. The solution is not money for homes; it's a cultural flaw, says Chris. The homeless should be running the program. Yeah, I agree. Many programs they should be running.
Well, they should be part of it, but they don't. They reformed homeless people should
Reformed
maybe
homeless people should be running them. Yeah,
but you got to get those reformed people first because they would know the ins and outs of the situation. They have to be included as well. But
okay,
right now they're becoming the pariah of society. So
it's not like this is the developing world, says Chris. But hey, isn't it just like this is the developing world?
Yeah, it's a hard turn back to the developing world. It's a backward step.
Yeah,
and it's obviously a contagion in our society that isn't a good one, and we have to get our people back into society and welcome them back in somehow, some way.
Yeah. It's not an easy solution, and I'm not sure use of the notwithstanding clause and tearing down encampments is going to help.
What is going to, though? No one else has a solution.
Yeah, I'd like to hear. I think we need solutions rather than I think I'm with everybody in saying that encampments are ugly. I think we can't deny that. But
and the behavior of the homeless is abominable in a lot of incidents.
A lot of instances
over and over and over again.
Yeah,
you hear about the abominable behavior of the homeless people, even how they abuse the shelter system and how much of a big mess they make. So so they are becoming more and more pariah. The patience of the rest of society is running thin, and
but there is one homeless guy that I'm aware of who basically he's been doing what he can. He Ubers pretty well every day. All right, he might sleep in his car, but he's Ubering.
One guy.
Yeah, one guy. I know one guy.
I know one guy too that's just on the edge of society, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't do anything like that.
Doesn't do any of that. One of the most
intelligent persons I've ever talked to. Anytime I see him, he's dragging himself around at night or some other place, and I throw him a few bucks, but I sit down and talk to him. He's one of the most intelligent men I've ever talked to. He's very well informed on everything, but he's one of those people who are fringe, that are on the outskirts of society. That now he would be no problem if you get him a place to stay. He could be no problem at all, but most of them aren't. Most of them aren't like that, and that is the biggest problem.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's been too much of the there was one Tim Hortons that I've gone to on a few occasions where I would rarely go now, where basically what you've got is about 10 or 15 homeless people hanging around the door.
Yep.
And they're not begging or anything when you go through there. They move out of the way. They're respectful for people, but it just is like, well, I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to walk through them.
Well, in New York City, I was there in the wintertime, and they allowed the homeless people to come into the subway stations at night, and they let them sit along a wall or some area. They got cops there. And so it's close to the cafeteria where people sit down and have a snack and stuff. And so people would throw them some food here and there, but they've got cops there and they're allowed to stay in there as long as they behave themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
we don't have subway systems here, though.
Better build one then.
Not in Niagara Falls anyway. I know we do in Toronto.
We'll get Doug Ford to get us a big tunnel.
Maybe that's the idea of the tunnel. under the 401.
Okay, what else we got?
Okay. Just seeing if there's any more comments here. We got a whole heap of comments coming in here. Right. When government comes up with minimum care standards, we're in big trouble. Okay. NYC bus stops benches have heat. So I think all arbitrary, all I think we can all absolutely agree that the beginning to repair that the beginning, right. I think we can all absolutely agree that beginning to repair our system is to stop giving away money to other countries and supports like we are rich. Yeah, I would tend to agree. We've got to figure these things out quickly.
Well, some of that money, I'll interject here, is saying some of that money that's sent overseas stops some of the migration that leaves those other countries that come here.
Yeah, it does. But anyway, but I understand where Randy's coming from. Paula McLaren, oh God, not homeless people near the door. Come on, throw them some food here and there. Yeah. Yeah. And Betty Zoom, thinking about homeless people, try to shelter them. Yeah, we've talked about that particular thing.
Shelter's the first place, but as I've said before, we find people going into the shelter. If sometimes when they get
we don't have
the homeless people and they put them in hotels or something like that, they find that they just revert back to their old ways. So there's no in between. Once they get them a place and then they try to take the next step, that they just revert back to their ways. So whatever this, I would call it somewhat of a social contagion. Sometimes the homeless lifestyle seems to be an easier option for a lot of them. And also, I talked to a couple of homeless people one day. I just drove by and I just wanted to talk to them, and two homeless people, and they told me once you get that homeless status, it is nearly impossible to get out of it. It is once you have reached the point where you no longer have a home or no longer have a place to live, to crawl back up to the point where you can get another home is extremely difficult. That may cause destitution in the minds of the homeless, so they just give up and carry on with their homeless lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay, so why can't we get funding and make them their own? Then they're in one place. Yeah.
These are the questions constantly, and that's why I say we have to have a government ministry, basically an agency that directly deals with this. Right now, we are just kind of pinballing between NGOs, city or region or whatever.
If we don't have a ministry that's dealing with it, it gets lost between the cracks. Okay,
Peter Biker residential schools.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll have to put them in residential schools. Yeah, the homeless. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
And Chris Simone makes a very perfectly good point. Something for nothing never works, and that's perfectly true.
Yeah, it true. It minimizes the worth of it.
Yeah,
it minimizes the worth.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Looks like one more comment. We are soon to be heading towards the idea of fenced-in encampments. Yeah, I think that might well be where we end up, and that probably cities are going to have to segment a section of land off for a homeless encampment.
So I think that crack about the residential schools is really quite evident. What did we as a society think was good for the Indigenous people long ago was to put them in residential schools and to kind of force them into modernity. Do you then do the fenced in property, the reservation for the homeless people, and force them into some residential homeless places where we as society know better for you, and we're going to reintroduce you back into society? But
well, there's actually the funny thing is about that is that in this year in Star Trek history is the year where they started they started basically encampments for the homeless, sanctuary districts in Star Trek history. So there you go. 2024, that was the start of sanctuary districts, right?
Yeah.
Which was about homeless, a place to put homeless people. But okay, problem is dividing them from the junkies and to the is dividing them from the junkies to the homeless. I'm not heartless, just seen too much of it. Yeah. And thank you. Didn't know you had a channel. Yeah. Okay. And
St. Kitts.
yeah. And basically, Chris Simone, even volunteers get a lot back for the labor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, you get. I do a lot of volunteer work with Kiwanis, of course, but I don't even really think of it. I think just I don't have to worry about the food on my table or house or shelter over my head, and I think probably just about every.
Keeps you busy. It keeps you busy, right?
Well, also it just seems to be a no-brainer of mine. That's kind of the culture and society that I grew up in. It just seems to be a no-brainer to do that.
Yeah,
to give back to this, whether you're a hockey coach or a baseball coach or a dancing coach or whatever you are, when you're giving back to society, when you're not being paid for it for any particular reason, you're doing it just because it's good. You are a member of society to do those kind of things, and I think that's what Chris is on about. You're getting payback because you're just improving the lives of another person. So that's, I think that's reward itself.
Right. And Betty Zoom says, thank you for your views on life. Yep. Yeah. But that's why we're here, Betty. We try and get what we can.
Thanks, Betty. I appreciate that comment.
And I tried to make Wheels great again, but what a lost cause. Go Trump, go. Yes, Gary.
All right, Gary, I'm going to vote for Harris. I'm going to give you 2-1 odds, but I'm only going to bet $1.
Okay, so let's move on. Largest ever U.S. solar array project is with almost 2 million solar panels has gone online in the middle of the Nevada desert. This is a 1.4 gigawatt solar energy creation solar energy center, and it has four banks of 380 megawatt batteries for storage, each of these giving basically 4 hours of 4 hours of storage energy for Las Vegas needs 690 megawatts of generation capacity, and they're able to outstrip that.
This is why Nevada is going to go for Harris, because Nevada believes in global warming and are doing the right thing by doing renewable energy. I'm glad to see this project happen. Like, Nevada has vast areas of open nothingness, desert. And of course, what are they going to get? They're going to get a lot of sunlight. So they have decided to make this incredible solar farm, probably the biggest in the world, I imagine.
I would think so, yeah. 1.4 gigawatts it's producing. And by comparison, the Las Vegas power needs are 690 megawatts. So
now let's qualify that statement. It can do 1.6 megawatts on optimum times when the sun is out. That's when it can make. That's when it can make.
It can store this energy on 380 megawatt battery banks.
Yes, And that is an important thing. And the way they did that was they're going DC power into the batteries. In prior attempts, they've in other places they've gone through an inverter so that they can produce AC power. But in this particular case, they're going directly to DC power and filling up their batteries in DC power. But the problem is they cannot bring their batteries up by using outside power. That was the rub. And so you cannot use it, take power from the rest of the grid and fill up your batteries because the rest of the grid is AC. Now, when they go to use that power from the batteries produced, they then throw it through an inverter and then put it into the grid. But it can't be reversed the other way around. And that was one of the hitches apparently in the article because of grants or whatever other things that apply to this. That they changed the rules on that so they could store battery power, DC battery power, and then invert it into the grid, and that's what helped them get some more funding to this. Now, this is a situation you can imagine all over the world. Photocells are becoming more and more efficient, and if you look at the Sahara Desert, that's a massive desert. I mean, I lived there for 3 years. I know what it's like. It's sun, sun, sun. The easiest job in the world is being a weatherman for the Sahara Desert. Today it's going to be bright and sunny.
Today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be bright and sunny today. It's going to be hot and bright and sunny. So and that's just about every day of the year. So the idea here is that this is shown that it can be a very effective way of making power. So 1.6 gigawatts is a lot of reduced oil and gas consumption because Nevada would probably get most of its power from natural gas generators. So anything to reduce the amount of carbon and methane into the atmosphere is a good thing. And if this is working, then you can imagine Saudi Arabia, if they could get a huge solar panel set up there, they could be a transmitter of power into the Middle East and revert some of their energy supplies of oil and gas into supplying the world with electrical power. Of course, the advances have to be made continually thereafter. Once it becomes financially viable, then you will get investment. And that's the rub with capitalism. It has to be financially viable.
Yeah. And the point about the battery system is that we utilize power more at night than we do during the day. So hence the need for batteries and the battery system. And it's not just a backup, it's the fact that at night we're drawing off those batteries and in the daytime we're charging those batteries.
Yeah, that's the rub with solar power. It has to be done in DC. So the DC power fills up the batteries. Then the batteries have to be in the power coming out of the batteries have to go through an inverter to make it AC power. So DC to AC power. It's kind of like what a Tesla works like. They take battery power and invert it to an AC motors so that it can function better in the ways that we need it. So this is probably going to be one of the harbingers of the future because there is a lot of desert land in the United States, in Mexico, throughout the Middle East, and that shows you the potential of solar power and how it can take the place of oil and gas.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine all of the deserts having these things in them. That was a pretty impressive amount of power that could be produced.
I see a point where the photo cells will be raised up high and that you can farm the land underneath. Once you put the photo cells there, you are reducing the heat put upon the land underneath it. There still is light escaping, but that would make it easier to cultivate the land underneath. If you add water to it, you could probably use less water to cultivate crops that need less light.
And Karen says, heaven help us if the Vegas lights go out. And Randy's, financially viable. Right. Okay. So where was this is where the cost of all the parts needed to build your own solar panel system cost far more than the simplicity of electricity from hydro, coal, etc. on the grid. And it's always about money. Otherwise, everyone could afford a solar panel. In fact, actually, we could afford a solar panel. You can actually, there's a lot of small units in solar panels, and most of them don't cost very much.
Well, I got a friend who's got a geothermal heating system, and he's also got his roof covered with solar panels. Yeah. Because he could afford to do it, but that's reduced his power, And when you say financially viable, unfortunately, that is the benchmark that we need for investment. When people go to invest in things, they have to see that it's financially viable.
Yeah.
And that, I say, is the rub of a capitalist system. That's what we're reliant on, is investment. So if somebody can be rich, they'll do it.
Is there enough enough sun and wind to say this would work? Well, yeah, in the desert, we've got clearly enough. There are certain parts of the world where we've got clearly enough wind. We've got certain parts of the world where we've clearly got enough sunshine. In fact, actually, we get large amounts of sunshine here, actually, in Ontario.
We are not fully utilizing our ability to capture the sun. If you look at all the plants, everything that lives requires sunlight as a source of energy. That is the energy of photosynthesis. The amount of sunlight that comes onto the earth would provide us, if we could convert it, would provide us more power than we would ever need as a civilization going forward for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands. But we can't do it. Our technology hasn't come up to that point yet. Our technology has not been able to maximize our ability to convert sunlight directly into power. Photocells are a way of doing it, but they are not exactly that efficient at this point. So that's why you need huge, huge fields of solar panels. Whereas if you had, you could outdo that with a gas turbine generator in a very small spot. But you need massive amounts of solar panels to make a difference. That's the rub. And yes, we do. If we can, converting the sun's energy, if we could do it efficiently, would give us more power than we could ever use. But the fact that because the amount of daily sunlight on the planet provides a massive amount of potential energy. Well, it is energy. So that if we could find a system like the plants use, as photosynthesis, we could do the same thing. We could have incredible amounts of power. We just haven't got the technical wherewithal to do that at this point.
Right. Okay. So we have almost everywhere in the world that has enough water to run hydrogen, which turns the water into mechanical power, which can produce electricity. Right. So that's what Randy West was saying. Betty is saying, but they talk of hiding the sun sometimes. And I said, no. And then she's apologizing for her bad spelling. Thank you, Betty.
Well, I'd have to include myself in there, and I think my spelling got worse ever since autocorrect came along. But that's the English language for you. It's not a spell-worthy language, really.
Yeah, autocorrect is actually the bane of the modern technology, isn't it? Because it often autocorrects things before, we're writing a word like hydrogen and you end up with hydrangea.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, the fact here is that we do. I will go back on that comment about the amount of rivers we have. No, we don't. We don't have enough rivers, and huge amounts of our population do not have rivers that can be dammed up. And also the fact that damming up rivers to provide electrical power is an environmental problem in itself.
It is.
It destroys the environment for certain animals and stuff like that. So if you've got the Three Gorges Dam in China, that's a massive product. You got the Blue Nile project in Ethiopia, which is a massive project, but they are also very controversial. If you say the Blue Nile project in Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt are very upset about it. They think they're going to get less water downstream because, of course, once you've got a massive reservoir, Ethiopia itself being a very dry place, they might take off too much water for their own needs, and that's what's bothering Sudan and Egypt. So it's a very controversial thing. Hydropower can be very controversial. We haven't been able to maximize hydropower well enough in the sea tides and stuff. For instance, the Bay of Fundy has a 50-foot tidal bore goes down it. We could use that to produce massive amounts of electrical power if we had the technology. But so we are still moving in those areas to maximize our renewable resources. And if we could ever get our act together better than we have done, we wouldn't need gas, oil, or nuke if we could find ways.
Randy has the answer. We build a huge treadmill for all the homeless to walk on together in order to create mechanical electricity for which they could earn a living just by walking us into the power and go and power the grid.
That's it. Yes. And yeah. Well, what we'll do is we'll put a harness. We'll put a harness on them. We'll put them on a treadmill, put a harness on them, and then have a stick extending out with a hamburger or something like that. So they just keep walking towards the food.
And every once in a while, you can feed them. You can let them get.
Yeah. Every once in a while, just throw them a kernel, But
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That isn't without precedent. They used to do that with prisoners. They used to get them to walk on treadmills and things like that to power grist mills and things like that for grinding flour or removing the chaff from grain.
Trouble is, of course, is that it's a great idea, Randy, and have a great day. But I also see a massive human rights violation going on here. See a massive human rights complaint coming down the line for that one. Okay, so so that'll be us in the new world. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay.
Put those vermin to use. Get them on a treadmill. I could just see a big hamster wheel with the homeless people in it, gigantic hamster wheel as they go round and round, faster, generate more power. You got to get up to 60 hertz, fellas.
Yeah. Dave, so clearly Peter and Dave have visions of whipping people. Okay. So we've just had, so stay safe and have and hugs, says Betty.
Thanks, Betty.
Okay. Thank you, Betty. And thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We're kind of winding down right now. So I thank everybody for being here. And Dave, got any final thoughts?
Well, today, my buddy Trump's going to win or Kamala's going to win. And like I said, I'll take Harris and I'll give anyone 2-to-1 odds as long as they don't have to bet more than $1.
But you'll bet hundreds of people $1.
Well, yeah, I don't think it'll be lining up, because
I'm not even predicting it. I'm not even predicting it on election day. It's too close.
as I say, I'm predicting Harris to win by 5 points, Gary. And not that I really like that result much better than the Trump one, but I just think that's the way it's going. 5 points.
All right. So thanks everybody for being here.
Okay. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Peace be upon us. Bye.
Okay. Bye.